welcome back to this wonderful series. Today, we're going to talk about demystifying elected officials. I'll be your moderator for this particular module. Again, I'm Kelsey Gilmore-Futerall. I'm a legislative attorney here at Best Friends Animal Society, and I will kick it over to Kathleen, who's one of our sit-down chat partners today. So, hey, Kathleen, introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. I'm Kathleen Murphy. I'm based out of Nashville, Tennessee, and I am a legislative policy analyst here at Best Friends.
Awesome. Glad to have you. And Keiko.
Hi, I'm Keiko Burkon. I am based in Spotsylvania, Virginia, and I am the digital organizing manager here with Best Friends.
Fantastic. Well, I guess I should round that out and tell everybody that I'm in the Charleston area in South Carolina. So now we know where everybody is, and we're super excited to have you here on this topic on demystifying elected officials, because sometimes we know that when you're ready to talk to an elected official, they can be a little intimidating, kind of scary. And we're hoping that after this conversation and this chat with Kathleen and Keiko, you will be ready to take them on head on. So Kathleen, I want to start with you because you're an elected council member. So already we're demystifying you. In your experience, why do most people run for local office like you did?
Yeah, I'm like, hello, I'm a real person. I think I'm approachable. That's the thing is I am here at Best Friends, working as my day job. And then I moonlight as a Metro Council member here in Nashville. And really, I ran because I cared about my community. I didn't see somebody running who I felt represented, my neighborhood and the values and things that I wanted to see in my local government. And honestly, my colleagues, I am unlike a lot of cities. We have 40 members of our council right now. So I have a good poll here to say that most elected officials run for the same reason. They care about their community. Maybe it started as a one issue thing that upset them. I have a colleague who their house was on fire. They called 911 and the response time was really poor. And so she ran for council and she's been serving for the last 4 years. So it could be that. It could be what y'all work on every day with with your animal shelter and a need you see there, or the need for more involvement in public schools. Everybody might have that one issue that gets them motivated more than others, but ultimately it's the same, that we all want to make our community a better place to live, work, and play most of the time.
I think it's such a good reminder that particularly on the local level where most of the shelter change happens, that's the reason that people are in office, and that they tend to be really in tune to what's happening in their community. So Keiko, maybe you can help us with the next question about how we start to build a relationship with our policy and lawmakers. How do we do that? When do we do that? What thoughts do you have for our network partners on this?
Yeah, thanks. I think, when you start building the relationship is now, if you haven't already. If you have some sort of ask or anything like that, it's always nice to be able to build that relationship before then, but, it's never too late to start building a relationship with a legislator. And to do that, it's quite easy. You just need to stay in tune with them and just keep up to date on what they're doing, and really reach out on multiple issues that you may have opinions on or things like that. It's also important to, go to their events, see what they're doing, introduce yourself. You don't always have to have some sort of, issue in mind or ask in mind to start building this relationship with your legislators and your local policymakers, because it's important that you stay up to date with what they're doing anyways, because what they're doing has a direct impact on your work at the animal shelter, your work in the community, everything that they touch is something that you want to be involved in and really stay connected with. And if you're showing up and you're, consistently communicating with the legislator, that shows the legislator how invested you are in, their work, and that you're not just kind of a fair weather friend when you are always just, coming in when you need something. It's important that as with any relationship, it is a two-way street. So really being there for them, and then they will recognize that, and then they can be there for you.
I think it's important to build off that too, where you ask them. So if you don't have an immediate ask or request or need something, perfect time to build the relationship, like Keiko said. And, you know, as an icebreaker, something easy is to ask them what they're working on or what their top priorities are. That takes the pressure off of you a little bit. And most politicians like to talk about themselves, right? So asking them what their priorities are and things like that. Now they might bounce it back to you and say, what do you think about this, or what are your priorities? So be prepared for that. But it's a good icebreaker to get that ball rolling. And just showing up and being around, going to committee meetings, going to commission or hearings, where they start seeing your face more and more. And then it will recognize, they have a lot of constituents, a lot of people pulling them in different directions. So just making yourself as visible as possible.
That's a really great suggestion. Charlie has taken that advice to heart. So she showed up here for a little extra kibble. So she's listening and hoping that by showing up, she will also get what she wants, which is more snacks. So good advice, ladies. So showing up at full committee meetings or at subcommittee meetings where we're addressing the animal shelter, animal control issues, typically we find those notices online. Is that right?
Yes. You can find all of those notices online. And if you're showing up consistently, again, like we've said, it shows that investment. And if you're showing up consistently and you're, maybe reintroducing yourself every time, they will start to recognize that this is an issue that you care about. And maybe they may preempt maybe some of your contact and go ahead and contact you because they know how much you care about this topic.
That's a great idea, just being a consistent presence there. So we know that our network partners are sheltering experts. They may not be public speaking or lobbying experts, if we can use that word. So how can we increase their confidence, those who are watching this right now, and also improve their credibility or make them feel more self-assured and self-aware that that they do know what they're talking about when they're reaching out to discuss these issues with their elected officials?
I think it's important to establish your credentials in a way that humanizes you, not in a way that says, I'm better than other people, I know all of these things, right? But letting them know your experience through stories, through a show and tell, bringing a prop like Kelsey did with her dog, just things that will remind them of you and keep that in the front of their mind, even as much as just wearing a lapel pin with the dog or a cat or the shelter logo on there, your nonprofit on there. It builds that connection and that loop, so they know that is how you are credible, and not coming off in a way that I have multiple degrees or I've been here for 17 years, so I know what's best, because that doesn't always come across as well as it is meaning to.
And I also think it's just important to recognize that legislators and policymakers, like Kathleen said, are just regular people. They're not experts on everything happening in their community. Sometimes, depending on the level of government, they may have staff members that are more knowledgeable about certain topics. But it's also important to recognize that you're the expert on your shelter, on your issues. So when you come to them to communicate about these things, obviously always being respectful, calm, nice, you want to work with them, not against them, but also just recognizing that you're the subject matter expert on your issues, and being able to share that information with them in a way that kind of contextualizes it within the community, I think is very important as far as establishing that credibility, because you can say, well, you may know everything about your sphere, you also want to recognize that that's not everything that they're thinking about. They're thinking about their whole constituency. So any way that you can kind of contextualize that and how much you may impact the community at large with your programming, your things that you're putting on to help the community members, not just the animals, I think is really helpful for establishing credibility. Because in reality, you know, legislators, policymakers, they're thinking about how to get reelected at the end of the day. So I think that's important to remember that while they may care about animals, it is not their top priority, because animals can't vote, but their people can. So, you know, keeping that in mind, I think is really important for establishing credibility too.
I think, as Keiko said, you know, legislators need votes to stay in office. And so if you're bringing an issue to them that you want them to support, or you just want them to be aware of, or you want them to oppose, letting them know that you have 10 other people that care the same way, and that translates into legislative math to that's 10 votes plus you, right? And so you know, you don't ever use it as a threatening tool, but use it as a validation tool that you are speaking for your group of friends, colleagues, constituents, family, so on and so forth. I think that helps to back up and validate what you're saying and add that credibility.
Yeah, so there are a couple things in there I want to dig a little deeper into. One, Keiko, that you focused on was how we can make decision makers care about issues that are going on at the animal shelter. It's been my experience, like you said, that I'm not going to reach them necessarily with the compassionate arguments that are the reason that maybe we're involved in the field, or the reason that our volunteers show up every day. So are y'all able to share maybe a little bit, getting into the weeds a little bit, as we might say, about what an argument might be, say, for a community cat ordinance? If we want to pass a community cat ordinance, if we're not going to talk about cat life-saving, what are some other tools or some other arguments that we might use to reach those legislators where they are? And we say legislators, but y'all, we mean council members, policymakers, decision makers. We're not saying legislators to mean people in DC or people even at your state house. We're talking really about anybody who's making decisions that affect you. But let's maybe talk a little bit in the weeds so they have some context for that.
Yeah, that's a very good clarification about terminology there. So thank you, Kelsey. I think, you know, as far as community cats and, you know, talking about an issue that really matters to you, but may not matter to a legislator as much, I think it's really important that you know that legislators' priorities, like Kathleen said. So any way that you can connect your issue to their priorities, the more successful your argument is going to be. So for instance, if you're talking to a decision maker that may be more concerned about saving the community more dollars to put into another project that they have. You know, you can talk about the cost effectiveness of a community cat program, or, you know, maybe that legislator is dealing with a lot of complaints about nuisance cat behaviors. Being able to mitigate that and, you know, say, look, this is how we can solve for that. So you can tell your constituents that you have a plan to, you know, decrease, you know, maybe some marking going on by cats in the neighborhood or things like that. I think that's really important to be able to make those connections. And again, put it in context of, you know, how the people in the community will benefit from these programs for animals, for cats. You know, I think that's really important. And you know, if you're able to make that connection, it will resonate that much more with the policymaker.
That's really helpful and tangible. I appreciate that. And then Kathleen, something that you mentioned, I thought we could get into a little bit more. You talked about expanding your voice at the table to be representative of the people who care about what's going on at the shelter. So can you talk a little bit about when it's a good idea to engage other stakeholders? I know we're going to have a module on that, but is that what you're talking about? Is those stakeholders?
Yes. So it could be stakeholders, meaning other animal advocacy groups in your community or rescue groups that you partner together with. But it also could just be, to use Keiko's analogy or example of, my neighborhood is having a problem with nuisance behavior from a cat. So I have 15 of my neighbors sign a letter and send it to my elected official or decision maker saying, we're all concerned about this. It's not just one letter, but having more people speak with one voice helps draw attention to it and show that I'm not just a cat hater. I'm not just somebody who is the negative Nelly running around the neighborhood looking for problems, right? Saying this is a problem. These are the people who care about it. And if you can offer a solution, that's great. But simply also asking to work with them to find a solution is key too. And that's the way you can approach it as well.
That's something that Keiko touched on as well earlier, and she addressed something that is one of our pillars at Best Friends, which is approaching things with kindness. So how much does it matter, Kathleen or Keiko, to come into these conversations with a positive attitude and with a kind message, kind of assuming positive intent on behalf of the decision maker? Can you talk a little bit about maybe how we can, we might be a little jaded. Maybe a network partner has worked for years on an issue in front of their council and has just hit roadblock after roadblock. So how important is it to come at this with a positive attitude and a kind mindset?
1,000,000% you have to remain positive. Now there are some caveats there. But overall, to get more accomplished, you need to stay calm, respectful, because just as I mentioned a second ago, you may be representing 15 of your neighbors. That elected official is representing everyone in their district. And if you disrespect them, you are basically disrespecting their district and their constituency, even if you are their constituents, right? It's very important to kind of keep boundaries and lines there. But that's not saying to sugarcoat real issues. But say you disagreed with an elected official on their last vote. That was the last vote. We're on to the next vote, and you're going to need them again. And so burning that bridge does you no good. Now, if they have, if you feel like they lied to you, if you feel like they misled you, or they, they read some awful dog bite story into the record, don't lose your temper with them and approach them with, let's see how we can work this out. Can I provide some information to help you? How did you draw that conclusion? Because this research says X, Y, and Z. So basically it is checking your emotions at the door for the long-term relationship and good of any issue, because one issue may pass and on to the next one.
That's a really good reminder that we don't want to jeopardize our relationship or our reputation for one particular issue in front of a decision maker or the body as a whole. We've got a longer term, this is a marathon, not a sprint, when we're looking to improve animal welfare and live outcomes at shelters. One other thing I want to talk about before we run out of time is how we can connect with these decision makers, either in our own shelters for network partners or at least outside of council chambers. So what are some ideas that we can offer to network partners for those engagement opportunities, and how can we get elected officials to show up?
Well, first, there are many ways. Invite them to anything your organization is doing or participating in. Even if you're just having a table at the summer festival, tell them that you're going to be there and please come by. If they do come by, take a picture, post it on social media, thank them for being there. And so it can be that. It can be inviting them to come see the shelter or visit a foster home that has new puppies or new kittens that they're fostering. Or it can be as simple as, and Keiko's heard the story before, I love that there was a mom's group that did a chain of paper dolls to represent children in an issue, and legislators have them all hung up in their office. So different things like that can get attention and help you have that face time and build that relationship as a two-way street.
Yeah, just to build off that two-way street, to remember again that, one of their end goals is likely getting reelected. Any way that you can thank them for their work. Mind you, do not promote their candidacy or anything like that. You don't want to, cross that line. But, like Kathleen said, inviting them to an event that you have going on, maybe you have a fundraising gala or something of that nature, inviting them there and posting them on your social media, and then they'll likely do the same and post them on their social media. So doing that you can see a lot of collaborative, cooperative benefits when you're working with legislators in a way that allows you to get your shelter's name out there as well, just through, your legislator posting a tweet about, how they went to the fundraising gala and they had a bunch of fun, and here's some information about this shelter. Like I said, it's that two-way street. So any way that you can support them in a way that, doesn't cross the line of campaigning in some way for their candidacy, but also maybe doing some sort of programming around maybe doing some sort of legislator of the year award or something like that, where you can thank them for their work on your behalf. That is very helpful. And then plus, if they have that little award, they can put it in their office, just like Kathleen said, and people can ask about it. So it gives them something to add to their resume. So yeah.
And we have another webinar that we're doing kind of about elections, campaigns, lobbying, where are those lines? And just as a kind of disclaimer here, so if it is campaign season and you're having that fundraising gala or breakfast or a meet and greet at the shelter, it's okay if you're inviting all the current elected officials, like the whole city council to it. But if you're starting to kind of invite candidates, invite everybody. It's always easier to err on the side of caution and invite everyone, so it doesn't look like you're picking or endorsing a candidate.
Yes.
So I do want to wrap up. What I heard really resonating in that last bit from both of y'all is the power of a thank you. I'm a huge fan anytime I run a campaign in sending handwritten thank you letters and encouraging others to do the same, because when you send one handwritten thank you letter to one person on that elected body, everybody else sees it and they want to get in on that appreciation action. So that's a really good note to end on, and so grateful for your time, Kathleen and Keiko. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And thank you, network partners, and we'll see you at the next module.